Recording. Good afternoon. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a special Building and Finance Subcommittee remote meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 15, 2022. The time is 5:00 p.m. and we are meeting here in person at the Gloucester High School Library located at 32 Leslie O. Johnson Road in Gloucester, Massachusetts. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with state open meeting law. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. Additionally, all votes taken by the Gloucester School Committee's Budget and Finance Subcommittee during this and future meetings will be by roll call vote. At this meeting, there is no public comment, therefore instructions on how to speak to the subcommittee virtually are not issued. If you'd like to address the Gloucester School Committee, please comment at our regularly scheduled full school committee meeting. So this meeting is called to order. If we could introduce ourselves, Gary, can you start?
Sure, be happy to. Gary Frisch, I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the Gloucester Public Schools.
Bill Melvin, Gloucester School Committee.
Melissa Prince, Gloucester School Committee.
Mark Cole, Assistant Director of Public Works.
Joining us by Zoom.
Kathy Clancy, School Committee.
Thank you. And Maria Puglisi, our recording secretary, is with us also. We are expecting Mike Hale, our DPW director, and possibly Joe Lucido, our assistant DPW director. Hopefully they'll be joining us shortly. So this is a special meeting. We have a one-item agenda, which is to discuss policy, school committee policy file number KF, which is the community use of school facilities, and it's community use school facilities procedures. There'll be discussion potentially about building use fees, application for the use of school building property, and best practices of building use properties and procedures in other school districts. So I just want to start and say thank you very much, Mark, for taking the time to come here tonight. I know this is probably starting to ramp up of a very busy spring season for the DPW. We know your time is very valuable and appreciate you being here to help us address some of the language and concerns in our policies and procedures regarding building use. So I just want to start off by saying, this is a school committee policy. However, we work very collaboratively with the Department of Public Works in this process. So tonight, we received some information from administration from Superintendent Ben Lummis and Gary Frisch regarding some policies and procedures in other school districts. And there's been a request to the Department of Public Works for some information. So the goal of tonight, I think, is to, while we have this opportunity to address the DPW, have you answer some questions we may have, maybe if you have some concerns for us as we proceed in this conversation. This is the first of a couple meetings, I'm assuming, to determine if we should make any amendments to our policies or any amendments to our procedures.
Okay.
So I know I would like to start just as an umbrella to the costs and how that works. It's my understanding there's an account that is on the city side, not the Gloucester side.
Right.
And I was wondering if you could explain that a little bit to us as far as how the processes and procedures are for the access to that account.
Okay, the accounts for the building use fees, those get deposited in there, and what they can be used for is to help with the upkeep. Includes custodial costs, utilities, ordinary repairs and maintenance. I think we have to get permission from the city auditor to tap into the account. We've used it in the past, like for the YMCA after school program, we'll send down like 2 months worth of custodial costs and we'll get reimbursed through that. We can use it to buy, I think, some limited supplies that might get used by groups that are using the schools. Our biggest expense is having the custodians there. So we charge a cost per hour for a custodian to be there, from usually an hour before to set up to an hour afterwards to break down and clean up. Depending on the size of the event, we may have additional custodians there at different times. They might not all work, the same number of hours. And that's pretty much it from our end. we basically just, I mean, we provide the custodial coverage so that the school can be opened and closed and cleaned after and during the event.
So just to be clear, so when the building use fee is collected at some point, the money is deposited with the city, stays on the city side, managed by the city, and covers the expenses of the event, and those expenditures come from that account.
Right, for the most part, yeah.
So there's really no transfer of money to the school side that you're aware of, and I know that's more of a city.
Yeah, I know, I
Finance.
think at one point the money, like, some of the building use fee was deposited into the school one and some into the city one. But I don't always see what gets deposited where. And I know like the last couple of years, the building use fees have been relatively small because there hasn't been a whole lot of use, but I think probably the biggest thing on our end is that a lot of these events don't get charged the building use fee. They get charged the custodial fee only. Or if they do get a building use fee, it's minimal. It's not, I mean, it doesn't, what if, I mean, I'm not sure off the top of my head what the use fees are because I haven't looked at them in a while, but I know like for the YMCA, I don't know what they charge. I don't know if you charge like a monthly fee for them, Gary, or what it is, but like it's a huge custodial cost for us because that's 5 days a week. And at one point, I think it was in all 5 of the elementary schools, we ended up having to put like a second shift part-time custodian on basically to cover the cost of the YMCA being there. But as far as like the utility costs, and we don't really track, I mean, it's hard to track how much utilities are being used, you know, like on a Sunday afternoon or Saturday morning for basketball or something like that. The biggest thing we could use it for would be if there's any repairs, you know, minor repairs or maintenance in areas where the building use is being, you know, used. We could use it to do that to kind of supplement our budget.
Mm-hmm.
So is it fair to say there's not really much of a profit coming out of this?
No.
And probably like rightfully so, because looking through at least this year, and I know COVID has changed the dynamics of building use rental over the past couple of years, but it seems most of our rentals are community-based or school-based rentals. You know, it's either a PTO,
Right.
The YMCA, which is a nonprofit, things like that, at least in the elementary schools.
Right. I'd
That's
say
what we're
that
seeing.
The thing is like all of those community-related events cost us money. They
So,
don't cost the school money, they cost us money.
right.
So, I mean, it would be nice if it was supplemented a little bit more with some type of a user fee. I mean, again, we're not looking to make money off of this, we're just looking to
Break
cover
even.
our costs.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it's fair to say, and Kathy probably remembers some of this too, when the last, I'd say, in-depth conversations about this policy was several years ago, I think back in 2017, 18, and we know costs and fees have all gone up since then, but yet our fees probably don't represent that because we haven't addressed this policy in a while.
Right,
Which is pretty consistent with other school districts, I might say, because what I'm finding in other school districts, they really haven't
yeah,
touched their policies either since that date and time. So I think that's me asking for costs, I think is a good driving reason as to why we really need to look at this policy, not only now, but maybe every year thereafter, just to keep up with the cost so that, I mean, it's one thing that it may be a little bit of an expense to the community if it's for our kids, you know, but when it's outside organizations coming in, that would be a different conversation, or when it's a for-profit use, that's a different
yeah. I
conversation.
think we
as
could
well.
probably come up with an industry standard as far as utility costs.
Mhm.
And we could use that as part of the the building fee.
And do you have any questions you want to jump in? I don't want to.
No.
About costs, we're talking about, well, we were kind of just focusing on that account at first. I mean, the cost is a big conversation.
Yeah, no, I was looking at this thing you sent us today, the school building use fund.
Yeah.
Activities as of 2/14/2022. So opening balance, that's a city balance, correct? That 35.
I think that's like a carryover balance year to year. I don't think it goes away.
Right, it's like a rolling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's completely on the city, that's the city's money,
Yes.
it's not.
Yeah.
Revenues at 2140, that's what the city has brought in from building use fees up until this point.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the expenses, it looks like,
Doesn't look like we've charged anything yet.
yeah. Okay. And again, those expenses are a separate line item that goes to the city, is that?
The expenses, well, the revenues and expenses all are handled by that revolving account.
I see,
So revenues add and expenditures subtract.
I see.
Sometimes I gather what Mark is saying is that he hasn't reimbursed sometimes for the custodial.
It doesn't look like we've done any this year so far.
Yeah. So that kind of makes sense to me. So it could be a losing proposition, just hypothetically. Someone comes in, wants to rent the gymnasium, the field house. They have 8 generators in there, sucking the electricity out of the building.
Yeah.
Well, that's an expense, right? So, but that's not on the schools. That's the city. That's coming out of that balance account of theirs, correct?
Mhm.
Well, the utility, no.
No, we pay that out of our normal.
He's paying that out of his general fund.
Right. Okay. I mean, this is more for, this can be used for repairs or maintenance, not so much to pay like the utility bill, say.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if Kenny Costa, the auditor, could probably explain it better exactly what you can get reimbursed for, because we'll ask, like on certain projects that we might be doing, if we can tap into the building use account, and he'll say, you can only use it in areas where the building use is being taken place. So like if all we're doing is renting the gym and we want to replace, ceiling tiles or lighting in a couple of rooms away from the gym, we can't use the building use account. We can't use that account for it. It has to be just used in areas where the building use takes place.
Right.
But Mark, this is Kathy. I have a question. So, but ideally what should happen or, on a regular basis is that you would get reimbursed or some amount would get transferred over to your custodial costs, right? Like as we collect money for custodial cost, that, in theory should be, given back to the DPW as a credit to the budget, right? In an ideal world.
We invoice for our custodial costs. The school doesn't invoice for it. So we bill for it, we collect it.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
And Kathy, just jump in when you want to ask a question, because I don't really,
But
just feel free to talk when you need to, because I know your time is limited as well.
I just want to
Go ahead,
piggyback.
Gary.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to piggyback on what Mark said and what Kathy asked. So yeah, you bill, you collect, but also if you want to get reimbursed from the general fund, you can ask for reimbursement from that revolving fund.
Right.
Yeah.
Like when we invoice for an event, the money gets deposited into the revolving account.
Mhm.
And then if we want to reimburse our custodials for it, we can pull it out of that,
Yeah.
put it into our custodial, payroll account. I
On
mean,
this,
there hasn't been a lot of activity, so there really hasn't been a need to
Yeah.
do it.
did you create the spreadsheet that you sent us?
No,
today?
this is right from Kenny.
Okay, because I see 2 numbers that jump out at me. Revenues for 2019, COVID, $37,250. Did we use schools for COVID
That's
related?
probably the
stuff?
YMCA.
Okay, but we were only open till March.
Right.
Oh, no, wait, that was 2020.
20.
Okay.
yeah. So that was
So that
probably
was-
the YM. That could be the YM. I don't know. I'd have to look to see exactly what
Okay,
got deposited in there. But like I think the biggest revenue source we have is the YMCA.
okay, which makes sense. And then expense for 60,000 in 2021.
I'd have to look and see, we might have used it on a project that we were doing, something like
Okay,
that.
something related to
Yeah.
the schools.
Could have been the field house, maybe.
It could have been,
Yeah.
could have been for
Okay.
part of that.
Which would make sense.
Hmm.
But so, other than custodial fees, do you know of any other reimbursements you're asking for on a regular basis?
We
Like, is
just
there any-
asked for the custodial.
just custodial fees? So if there's any wear and tear to items, bathroom supplies, trash removal?
No, because we take it out of any expense like that, we would take out of the building, yes.
Take out of the, this is. the
Out of this
building.
account, because you
Right.
guys, like the schools, when they charge a building use fee, that's what that is for like the toilet, cover the toilet paper to cover some of the electricity, things like that. What we charge for is just for the custodial cost. I mean, we could come up with a list of costs, for a whole bunch of things if that's what you guys decide.
I mean, I think, and Kathy and Bill, you can weigh in. I mean, I think the goal here is to make sure that for at least certain groups that where it's not costing us any money. So I think that type of list would be very helpful. As we look, like I said earlier, we look at our fee schedule, and I know Gary's done some work on this, that the fees are very low and outdated. So for us to come up with a fee that's more appropriate for different organizations, whether we do tiers or however we decide to move going forward, we would want to know those costs. Like, I can give you an example, and I think I put it in my ask, like plowing. So say we have an organization that wants to rent on a Saturday in January for an event that is not school related. An outside organization comes in, they want to use our auditorium for some reason. And there's snow, night before it snows, there's a snowstorm. Do we usually plow the schools on a Saturday afternoon? In other words, is it an expense for us to plow that area to accommodate this rental now? Or is
No, because we're
that,
gonna plow it eventually.
you're gonna plow it eventually?
Like, we would plow it before school on Monday. So whether we plow it Saturday morning or Sunday morning, it's still gonna be it's gonna be the same.
But what if it was an extra? So say they need to get in the building at 9 AM and it's snowing out, so we need to plow. And it's still gonna be plowing at 5 o'clock and then going into Sunday. I'm
If
just
it's
trying to
an
find
event
out.
like
is there a
that,
way?
we might just cancel the event
Okay.
as opposed to,
Okay.
jumping through hoops to get it open, but like for the rink, a lot of times, our contractor we use the rink on Saturday and Sunday morning, and if it snows Friday night or Saturday night and we call contractors in, he comes in and we'll say, listen, we need to get the rink open by 9 o'clock,
Okay.
and it's up to him to get it open. So for the most part, like, the snowstorms aren't gonna cost us extra money really
Okay.
to open up a place, because we're gonna have to open it up anyways. And our contractor, we pay him by the inch, it's not by the hour, so he can blow it, he can do it at Saturday morning, he can do it Sunday night, doesn't make a difference, it's the same cost to us. So,
Interesting, okay.
yeah, it works out easier. That way he can do it at his pace, and he can figure out what it costs him to do it, and it works out good.
And I think, speaking from experience, that having run the girls' travel basketball program for a long time, a lot of times on Saturdays, it would be me calling the janitor over at
Yeah.
O'Malley and saying, hey, it's snowing, what do you think? And he might say, I can't get it cleaned up, Billy.
Right,
That's the end of it.
Right.
The discussion ends, we'll have it cleaned up for Monday, but we're not gonna
Right.
have it cleaned up.
right.
So yours is canceled then?
So it's just canceled, yeah. You're kind of at the mercy of the school, which is totally understandable, that if they can't get it cleaned up, then we're not playing.
Is the girls' basketball travel, is that considered ours or out of district? I'm just curious.
It's considered, it used to be Rockport and Gloucester girls.
Uh-huh.
Now it's pretty much just Gloucester girls, because Rockport has their own program. But, yeah, for the most part, it's girls that go to O'Malley or go to
Gotcha.
the elementary schools. So. But it's interesting here, Mark, because I always thought, well, the janitors are there.
The janitors, they clear the walkways and the
Yeah.
doorways and like that. Our contractor does the parking lots.
Yeah,
Like, they would clean. I think he plows like the open area between the rink and the school.
Yeah.
And, but the custodians, they do have a responsibility at the schools to clean any of the walkways, the doorways, so. And if you know, if there's a big event going on, we'll put a couple extra custodians over there to help clean, because a lot of times they'll go from school to school as a group and clear, so that it's, especially at, like the high school in O'Malley. But I mean, I don't think you could charge. I don't know if you would charge the event extra because it snowed the night before their event. I mean, it would cost us overtime anyways to get it ready for the school.
Right.
So I don't know that you could pass that cost off to somebody that wants to use the gym.
Do you normally have custodians clearing walkways on weekends, like early Saturday as opposed to Sunday, getting ready for Monday? How does that work?
We try to
with
clear the
custodians?
snow as soon as it stops. or
As soon as it
it's- Yeah,
stops.
so that, you know, it's easier to do it that way. But yeah, I mean, we've had custodians in on Saturdays and on Sundays to do snow removal at the schools.
And when you hire, do you mind if I
No.
just keep asking? Okay. So custodians on the weekend, do you have assigned custodians, or is that like an overtime?
It's an overtime
It's an
rotation for them,
overtime
yeah.
for Saturdays and Sundays?
Yeah.
Do they get paid more on Sunday than Saturday?
They get double time on Sundays and holidays, time and a half on Saturdays.
And is it by a seniority, first come, first serve? Like, and I'm wondering, how do you?
No, it's usually
how
by
do you know if
school,
it's
like the schools are
$19
responsible.
custodian?
The
Huh?
schools are responsible, the school custodians are responsible for their own school. Like-
So if we have an event on the weekend that's rented out, we'd be looking for the school custodian to work on a Saturday or Sunday. And how, if they're not regularly scheduled for that weekend, how is it put out to hire somebody? Because I know you have custodians that are making $19 an hour and you have custodians that are making $30 an hour. So how is it determined who comes in on those types of?
The
Request.
custodians at the school have first choice of overtime events. So if
Okay.
you had something scheduled here on Saturday, the custodians that work here would be asked. And that's the head custodian we have here. It's up to him to determine like the rotation, and he keeps track of it. So they offer it here first. If nobody here wants it, then he would get a hold of the supervisor and say, nobody at the high school wants to work Saturday, can you find somebody? And then Paul would go outside the high school to, he has a list of seniority for the custodians, and he would start at the top of that and work his way down until he finds someone to do it.
So by going by seniority, the more expensive custodian would have that.
Yeah, we have to go by seniority
Seniority, yeah.
for the contract.
So it's, okay. And is there any repercussion to a custodian refusing to work on a Saturday or a Sunday?
It's kind of a tough question because they're not obligated to work overtime.
So it's all overtime on weekends, with the exception, is the school staffed on the weekends usually though?
No,
No, so no
No.
schools are staffed on
No
weekends?
schools. The only place that's staffed on a weekend is the library, and that custodian works Tuesday through,
Oh,
not
the
necessarily,
soy-free
he
library?
works Tuesday through Saturday. But any event at any school on the weekend is an overtime event for us.
And would you say, and the answer could easily be no, I'm just asking, would you say that it's more difficult to get custodians in the summer versus the winter? And I only ask because I remember a few years ago when we were having beach traffic issues, we tried to get police to monitor the lights and try to assist with traffic on the weekends, and we couldn't get anyone to work. So I'm wondering
It's
if
not-
that's the same for custodians.
It's not so much seasonal, it's more the event.
The event, okay.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys like to work certain events and they don't like to work other types of events. But it's, I mean, if it comes down to, if we go through the rotation, if they start at the top and they go all the way to the bottom and nobody volunteers to work, and we need somebody, we can go to the lowest seniority and tell them they have to work.
Okay.
So we don't usually have difficulty getting coverage.
Overtime.
A lot of the guys, like it,
Mhm.
and that there's enough that do, and the ones that don't like it, we haven't run into an issue where we haven't been able to get somebody to cover.
Okay.
Worst case scenario, we could always go to our guys and
For the
say,
city
you know,
side?
if there's an event at the high school, we need someone down there. We could put one of our guys in there. That doesn't really happen, but I suppose in an emergency, we could.
Okay. And what about, say heating costs and electricity? Like, I know when I came in here tonight, all the lights were shut off, right? Because it's not in use. So, on the weekends, are there schools that are on some sort of schedule with their heating, like it drops to
Yeah,
40 degrees or?
the newer schools and the ones that have like the newer systems, those are all regulated, so they're like the heat's turned down on the weekends. And if it's in one of the smaller schools, usually the custodian will turn the heat down for the weekend. And then when they come in early Monday morning, you know, they'll get there. If it's a cold, like in the cold weekend, they may come in a little early to get the heat up and running before the kids and everybody get there, but I know like West Parish, and I'm assuming the new vets will have systems where it's all programmed that at such and such a time on Friday, the heat drops down to, you know, whatever temp and then comes back on. And I think Joe could probably answer this better, but they might actually have sensors that could tell if it starts to get too cold, they would automatically kick the heat back on and stuff.
Do you know if any of our schools, like at the courthouse, we have that system where the heat comes on based on the temperature outside? Is that green system that they put
Yeah,
in that
I'm
doesn't
not
work?
sure. Like I said, Joe handles all that stuff.
Okay.
He can tell you the answer on that.
And I'm just trying to determine on weekend rentals. I mean, we know during the week, the school's already heated and right after school's already heated, so we don't see any expenses
Right.
there. But on a weekend, there could potentially be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we
Yes.
could come up with an industry standard that says, you know, you use X amount of electricity per hour for in a space this big, you know, or X amount of heat and stuff like that.
I just think of the cost of oil and heat right now, and I can't imagine what it would cost to heat up a school if we didn't
Yeah.
have to. What about any other costs, Bill? Do you have any questions about costs?
Not really, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's,
Can you think of any other costs or expenses that we should be thinking about as we determine our fees going forward?
I mean, most of the events don't require a whole lot of setup. And if they do, a lot of times we can do it on straight time. Like if there's something going on in the high school, there's like a half a dozen guys working here throughout the course of the day. That if like chairs need to be set up or things like that, a lot of times that can get
Can
done,
incorporate it.
just incorporate it into the workday, but. I mean, we can sit down, Mike and Joe and I, and look at like what we could think as far as like on a weekend, what some unexpected costs and situations that come up, we could, you know, we could apply a price. I mean, again, yeah, I don't know how expensive you want to make it for somebody, you know, to use it. You want to
Yeah.
make it, I mean, right now, it's so cheap to use it. That's why people use it. You know, I mean, we're finding the same thing at like Stagewood Park and stuff like that, with these summer camps, they want to come. Well, it's so inexpensive for them to come that
They're coming.
they come and they keep coming.
Right.
And, you know, at a certain point,
It's interesting.
you know, we have to cut off, you know, like we take reservations for Stagewood Park and the beach, you know, as far as X number of buses, and that's all we allow.
Right.
But again, that, you know, what happens is a busload of kids show up at 10 o'clock without a permit and they've been in the bus for 2 hours.
Right.
It's kind of hard to turn them away,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
I think there's a healthy balance to find, and
Yeah.
that's part of this conversation. Like, we don't want to charge the PTOs and the youth basketball games if we don't have to, you know, because it's kid-based,
Right.
you know, and it's
Right.
people and taxpayers look at schools as children-based, right? So
Right.
things that are going on here that involve
Right.
kids, I mean, we're not looking for a profit.
Right, no,
You know?
and
And we're
we're
not
certainly not
necessarily
looking to
want to
make any,
pay
you know-
every single cost that there is if we don't have to. We're not trying to nickel and dime
Right,
them. It's
right.
more an organization that doesn't usually have attachment to the school, and programs like that, you know, training programs, or
Yeah.
people that want to use our space just because the amount of space we have, the location, but don't necessarily normally go to a school for that type of rental.
Yep.
So I think, which I know from my perspective, I'm sure from Bill's and Kathy's perspective, we're just trying to find that healthy balance where it's not really costing us a lot of money.
Yeah,
But at the same time, we're being realistic about what's going on and have at least the knowledge and understanding when we do rent, we know what that entails.
right,
So if anything, I think this conversation will generate is next time a build and rental fee comes in, it's gonna be like, okay, wait a minute, what's going on here as far as, are we getting enough information from our application? Do the fees match what's going on? Is there availability for all the staff that's needed for this type of event? You know, things like that is where we're trying to go with this conversation.
okay,
Yeah, and I think without breaking any union rules or whatever, I think there's an expectation on people that come to use the buildings that, you know, the janitors are there to help maintain the facility, but it's also on us to kind of help with that, don't, you know.
right. Our guys aren't there to supervise the event.
Right, exactly.
They're there basically to set up, to clean and, you know, break down. No, that's a good point.
And I think I read too, in their contract or somewhere, they are, for the building rentals, they do, before they leave, they make sure the building's secure.
Right.
I believe I saw that language somewhere.
But one of the problems we run into, you know, especially when there's kids involved, is kids get into the hallways and they start running through the schools and I mean, a school like this, if somebody goes running through and opens
You're
up
fine.
doors and, you know, you never know what's gonna happen later on. And we get alarm calls all the time for a window left open or a doorway wasn't, you know, it was closed at one point, but somebody went through and it wasn't closed tight, so it sets the alarm off at, you know, the middle of the night.
Do
But
you
I
have to pay
think,
for those?
what's that?
Do you have to pay for those alarm calls?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you charge us.
Yeah.
If it's our fault, rightly so.
But I think, you know, as far as like from the school end, with the building use going forward, there's got to be an understanding with whoever's renting the school, that they're the ones that are responsible for supervising and making sure that everybody stays. And I mean, the custodian can help, but it shouldn't be left to the custodian.
They're
to
not
have to-
security.
That they're not there to babysit or to, you know, to do that. They're there for, you know, if something happens and they're needed, you know, they're there. They set up, they clean up, they get out of there afterwards.
Since we're talking about custodians, do you or does the DPW have a preference for when they know the amount of people that are gonna be in a building? Is there any type of regulation or standards where what would trigger having one custodian versus two custodians? Like 100 people versus 300 people, you know, how would the DPW react to that? Like, is there a number up to
I
100?
don't think there's a set limit. I know we take a look at what the event is, how many people are gonna be there, what's involved with the event, and assign based on what we think we need.
And what type of time period would you say is appropriate for before and after an event?
Usually an hour.
An hour before, an hour after, so
Yeah.
if there's a 2-hour.
And again, it
event,
depends on
Who it
what the
is.
event is too, you know, I mean. You know, if, trying to think would be like for Billy's guys, if your basketball is in there in the morning, they don't need to be in there an hour
Right.
before. Basically, they come in, they open up the gym.
Yeah.
Afterwards, if everybody is, you know, basically stayed in the areas where they're supposed to be, there's a quick clean of the gym. Might be more like an hour afterwards and maybe a half hour before. I know we generally charge, I think it's an hour before and an hour afterwards.
But so you don't really have a head count per person, it's more.
I don't think we have
based-
anything formal. I mean, we could certainly come up with something.
That makes sense, yeah.
And we do a 4-hour minimum,
For our
because
minimum,
that's
yeah.
per contract. Our employees are paid for 4 hours.
As the only representative to the DPW here tonight, right now, do you have any concerns about a custodian being the only one in the building with an event of more than 100 people?
Again, it
That's
depends,
not school related, I would say,
depends
because we
on,
have teachers and staff usually with school based.
I think it depends on what the
What
event
type of
is and
event it
where it
is,
is in
yeah.
the school. I mean, is it? I mean, for a basketball game, if it's in the gym, we probably can get by with one custodian.
Because you have coaches and stuff. in there
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, if it's something in the auditorium where everybody's gonna be in the auditorium, you know, custodian, it's pretty easy to keep everybody in the, you know, in the auditorium.
Yep.
But I know Janine and Joe get together with, and now it's with Paul Russo, who's the new custodial supervisor. And they'll figure out amongst the three of them what they think they need, and we'll hire based on that.
I've seen in some other school policies, they have like event managers and things like that that can be hired for certain circumstances, for certain rentals, which I think is helpful when you have a larger group. That person could be a teacher, could be sometimes even a student if it's for technological assistance and
Yeah.
things like that. And of course, with our kitchens being used, we have kitchen staff, a requirement in their contract that if the kitchens are being used at any capacity, if they enter the kitchens, it has to be kitchen staff. So that's also helpful, another set of
Yeah.
eyes when we're renting our programs.
I wonder what the largest event is at the school. I'm thinking the health day that they have here at the high school. It's in the field house.
Yeah, and then they have like, don't they have like a career day or something too?
Korea Day.
But again, that's done usually during the school day, so we have
Yeah.
upwards of 4 to 5 custodians
Yeah.
working already. They may assign one to just kind of stay in the gym and just kind of, or just to make sure that if anybody needs anything or they have to get set up with anything, he's right there. But I don't think we've had too many. I mean, like a school play, usually get a decent amount of people for that, but I think most of the rentals, I don't think there's big numbers. I mean, I don't know how many kids the Y brings into each location.
Good number, I've been there.
Yeah,
Summer schedule, so does the DPW keep a schedule of what tasks they do over the summer as far as any repairs or getting ready to open the school?
Yeah, they,
Which would indicate that schools may not always be available for rentals if there's certain projects going on or basic standard upkeep or things like that. Like I know you clean the HVAC systems, waxing floors, fixing broken items.
yeah, there's a whole list of things that we do during the summertime. And a lot of times what they'll do, you know, starting around this time of the year is they'll start going to the school principals and saying, what do you want done what do you need done this summer? Give it to us now. And a lot of times, if they give it to us early enough, we can get started on it before school ends. But like this, when a classroom is being used for the summer, kind of messes up the routine at that school. Because what they'll do a lot of times is, like, especially with the elementary schools, if they're gonna wax the floors and things like that, they'll grab all of the elementary school custodians and they'll go to Beaman and because they're gonna move everything out of the classrooms and then they're gonna move everything back in. So they'll go there and get that school done, then they'll go to the next school, then the next school. And there's a lot of times we can't get into a school until like the week before school opens to do some major stuff.
Because of those summer
Because of the
classes.
stuff that's being used in the summertime, yeah. But Joe and Phil Kukuru have a list of what needs to be done. And like if a lot of times Michael have projects he wants to do in the summertime. And we'll let the school know that, you know, we want to do this summer, so can you move that classroom to a different school for the summer, and they're usually pretty good about it.
I had a question in the schedule. Do you have anything wrong with what the question was? Schools in the building, classes. And what, it's custodians, so are they on a regular, the school custodians, are they on a regular schedule summer long, all summer long, like are they year-round employees?
Yes, oh yeah,
For the school?
Yeah.
And they're kept busy in the summers, like would you say the summers is downtime for them or
No.
busier?
busier.
busier.
because there's nobody, usually there's nobody in the school. And they have a whole list of things that need to get done in the summer, because they can't do it during school year.
Which makes sense.
Can I ask a
Oh,
question?
of course, ask all you need, Gary.
Okay, I'm just wondering, would it be better not to rent during the summer because you guys need to concentrate on doing the projects and doing the waxing?
It would make it easier.
I did see in other districts that they don't encourage summer
Yeah.
rentals too, so don't, I mean,
Yeah.
that's part of the norm.
Yeah, no, I mean, it would definitely make it easier, the less activities that are going on in the schools during the summertime.
It would be interesting to know the breakdown of rentals, like how much do we rent in the summer versus.
I just found this out today.
There's an easy reading for you, Bill.
And this is only this year. There's a whole bunch of books. Maria informed me that today we can go through.
If you have trouble sleeping.
Right, yeah.
A little something to help you along.
We can each get a book and report out on it, see what's going on. Okay. Do you have any other concerns about summer rentals while we're talking about summer? I mean, anything from the DPW perspective?
No, I just think if you're gonna rent something in the summertime, as long as we get plenty of notice so that we can adjust our schedule if we need to. And they're usually pretty good about letting us know,
In
you know,
advance?
before school's out, where the summer classrooms are gonna be held, so we can make plans to work around it.
And I'm gonna assume that they do work on the outside grounds in the summer as
Yeah.
well too?
I don't know that there's actually that many outside rentals during the summertime. I think it's mostly like summer classes and stuff like that, but I don't really think there's that many outside rentals.
I also had asked you for occupancy information.
Yeah, we don't.
And you don't have
I
that.
don't have that.
And I think I sent Gary an email today. Do you know if we have on record what our occupancy limits are for, say, for this library? If someone wanted to rent this library, what is the total amount of people that can come in here according to Massachusetts laws, fire laws, and all that regulation that goes along with capacity limits?
I don't know.
Because I'm wondering, when we rent certain
That's a good
areas,
point.
we need to know
Yeah.
how we within our limit, like if we were
Right.
renting the field house and we knew 3,000 people were coming, that's not gonna work.
Right,
But if we knew it was 600, and I don't even know what our capacity is, do you know in
At the
there?
field house?
Yeah. Any, like, I don't even know how many bleachers would hold, but how,
Yeah.
when we're doing building rental, I would think that we would have to
yeah. that's good.
manage that
Right.
according to the regulations that we have to follow for capacity. So that when we do get a request that, say, 200 people are coming,
Right,
and we know only 150 is supposed to be in the building, and we only have 50 parking spots out front, how do we accommodate that?
Right.
You know, what is the process that's in place to say, hey, wait a minute, you can't use that school, maybe this school would be a better fit because it's bigger,
Right.
and, you know, to make those kind of choices.
that's an excellent point.
I see those kind of processes and
Mhm.
procedures that would need to go into rental requests as well.
Yeah,
And I'm hoping by the outcome of all these conversations, we can have some sort of checklist.
Yeah.
Somewhere through somebody, whoever's managing this, that those questions are asked, that we ask on the
on
application.
the
And
application,
then we see it, review it, and put best practices
right,
forward on how to accommodate that rental request if we can.
sure.
So it's not only costs, it's capacities and
Capacity.
things like
It's
that.
Adequacy.
So,
Go
ahead.
Melissa, if I could. This is
oh, I'm
Ben.
sorry, I
If I
forgot
could
to
chime
say,
in.
Superintendent Lummis is joining us by phone. I meant to introduce you earlier. So go ahead, Ben. Ben,
Okay, can I put together, yeah, can you
we
hear
can
me?
hear you now.
Okay, great. Just at some point tonight, or maybe if there's a next meeting, Gary and I put together, and it's in your packet there, it's in the folder, some suggested or possible places to revise the procedures and guidelines.
Yep.
And it may be helpful to look over that at some point, just because much of what you touched on tonight we have, but there's definitely a few we missed. Anyway, something that might be helpful in terms of looking through other policies and really procedures. Definitely areas I think we could tighten up or be clearer about what's expected or what's allowed or what isn't allowed or when, that sort of stuff. So that thing might be a useful thing to look at some point.
Yeah, I saw that today. Thank you, Ben. You can tell a lot of work went into that. So as far as thinking ahead. So I appreciate those.
Good. Okay. I'm gonna get off, but we'll catch up. We'll watch the Zoom and then touch base with Gary afterward. Okay.
Okay. Enjoy the game. Go,
Okay.
go high school.
Go fishermen.
Go Fisherman. Go. All right. Thank you, Melissa. Thanks a lot. All right. Thank you, Bill. Bye.
Thank you.
Bill or Gary, do you happen to have a charger?
I do not.
I do not.
Are you about to die over there?
And I forgot
For
my
Zoom?
charger.
Oh. Should we call Grant?
Is there a charger over there?
I can switch to that.
Yeah, can we
Okay.
switch?
Yeah.
So I say there might be a charge, someone might have a charger in that station in there, is what I'm thinking, no?
I don't know, but when my
Okay.
computer dies, we'll go back and I'll log in with
Perfect,
the TV
Okay.
keyboard.
thank you,
Just letting people know that might happen and we'll be back.
okay. So
Stay tuned.
do we have anyone from the public? Can you
Yes.
announce how many's listening?
5.
5, okay. Thank you for that. So parking spaces, you gave us those.
Yeah, that's just a quick count I
Quick
did
count.
for the aerial shots today. They could be off by a couple here and there. And I mean, those are just the marked parking spaces. Obviously, you can fit a lot more cars for an event.
In an
In
area.
an area, yeah.
AKA Talbot Rink.
Yeah. Yeah, stay off the grass.
Walked all the way down to the Little League field.
Yeah,
Right, so that was gonna be one of my questions. Do you know, and I just don't know, because we don't hear about rentals that often, you know, what happens, we just know great things come from the rentals. Has there ever been any concerns about damage to grass or fields from parking, not fields, but areas of grass where people are parking? Or is, to take it a step further, has there been complaints from neighbors if parking is now happening, blocking driveways and things like
I
that?
don't know that we've gotten any complaints, and
You
I
haven't got any?
mean, I don't know that there's been any substantial damages from people parking. I mean, we made some adjustments up at the rink to keep people off the grass in certain areas, and that's helped, but I mean, people want to park on the grass, they're gonna find a way to park on the grass, and we don't have anybody there to figure out who it is, so. It hasn't really been an issue.
And do you have any questions, Bill?
Just a comment, maybe on the city side, I've been stage for it a couple of times, and they've had, big events where they popped
Yeah.
on that. But that's.
Yeah, and usually, like at Stage 4, if we've had damage by an event, they pay for the damage, they pay for the
Yeah, like the
repairs.
bikers
Yeah.
that went up there and stuff like that.
Hmm.
That was built right into their
Yeah.
rental fee.
Yeah, and they had to get a bond, bike race, so it's covered under the bond if they didn't want to do it. We got it covered one way or the other.
And when a custodian is at an event, there's access to a supervisor all day long if there's any
Yeah.
issues?
Yeah, we're always accessible.
Have you experienced any issues with damage or notice? And that I know putting this question to you is probably not gonna get a response I would need because you may not know.
I haven't
Damage and
heard of
wear and
any.
tear, which I'd like to get a sense of if there's been any issues with that. I mean, we know our buildings are gems,
Yeah,
whether
I mean,
they're
I
old or
don't know that
not.
you could pinpoint any wear and tear on a certain group.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
I haven't heard of any specific damages from an
Any
event
rentals?
or anything
Okay,
like
good.
that.
How about security market? We ever had to work in conjunction with the police department for security at events in the schools?
Police department, overtime, what do you call them, details?
Yeah, I
Details.
would assume that they have been in some cases,
Yeah.
depending on what the event is.
I would think here, there's probably been some events or.
Yeah. And I know, like, we've had some road races that have started here. They haven't been in, they come in to use the restroom facilities.
Yeah.
And they get, they get charged a fee for that, and we have a custodian for that. And they'll have police details, but anything like that is paid for. Usually if there's a police detail needed, it's paid for by the organizer. It's not paid for by us, and then we look to get reimbursed. All that stuff gets charged out ahead of time, so.
So process, I have a question. So when an application comes in, it goes to us first?
You've laid out the steps. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. So the application is emailed to me from school secretaries. So whoever wants to use that school will submit it to the school.
So it goes to the school.
Goes to the school
First.
first for the principal to sign it. And then, once the principal signs it, they email it to me.
So the principal is signing off, authorizing it without doing any assessment? How many people, what are capacities, things like
Well,
that?
that's all listed on the application, how many people there are. I mean, you can see the applications in the book. The date and time they want to use it, how many people.
So the principals are aware of the
Yes.
information when they approve it, so the principal approves it first?
Yes,
Okay. And then it gets emailed
to
to,
me,
and in your capacity as what, because you wear many hats, so.
yeah, building use coordinator, I guess.
You get a raise.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure,
BCC, it sounds a little bit more professional.
yeah.
So
Okay.
then it goes to you and you do what with it?
And I will check that school's building use calendar, make sure the time is available.
Yeah.
If it's a normal, stuff we approve all the time, I'll just put it in the calendar. Stamp it with Gary's name, says approved.
So
And
you're
scan
actually
it.
approving it, not Gary?
Yep. And then scan it to the DPW.
But if
If
there's
there's something unusual,
unusual,
I either check with Gary or Ben first.
And those are for the regular
Yes.
standard YMCA, PTOs,
Yes,
you-
basketball.
basketball, the ones that we have
plays, Yep.
on a regular basis that are known to us.
Yep.
So what would happen if someone comes in that's not our usual process? So the principal would approve it first,
Mhm,
then it goes to you,
mhm.
and what the assessment you're doing is what?
If it's not a group I've seen before,
Yeah,
I would talk to either Gary or Ben about it. Say, what do you think about this?
okay. And what happens from there? So we go to Gary or Ben,
They say yes or no, and if they say yes, I stamp it and send it off.
okay, so that's your role.
And for the record, I brought one that my name happened to end up on. People like to say Bill Melvin will be in charge, but I had nothing to do with it.
I found ones in here that have my name on it that I
Yeah,
didn't know was on there,
exactly.
so I know you mean.
exactly. So, but it does have a signature for the principal signature. Number of people, are police needed, that type of stuff, and what's gonna be needed.
So that's what I'm trying to get at, and then I'm gonna get to Mark, to that role too. So group comes in that's not our standard every month or once a season, because I think we do more seasonal stuff
Mhm.
besides the regular PTO and us using it, people that use it on a regular basis. So it goes to Gary. So Gary, you get a request from something that's not familiar.
Mhm.
What kind of assessment are you doing? Like, what are you looking for? And when does the conversation happen with the DPW? I'm trying to get to, while Mark is here, is the communication that goes on between the two departments, but I'm trying to figure out. It seems like DPW is almost the last.
Yes.
We don't have a step in the process.
Yeah, which is a little bit raising a little flag for me. So I'm just trying to figure out
Sure.
how it currently works so that if we want to make changes, how that works. So you get something that's not familiar to us.
Right.
Or Ben, and I know you can't answer for Ben, but what is Gary doing when you get that request, what is Gary doing when you read the application? What thought process do you have?
So I have had maybe in 4 years,
One rental, two rentals, yeah,
maybe 2 and 4
because of
years.
COVID, yeah.
So the first one was, I think it was a road race. I don't know if you remember, but that one, the renter wanted to have a waiver because of some reason.
Okay,
So, so that was my, I made the call in that situation because of extenuating circumstances to reduce the fee.
so you made a call based on the request for the building use fee,
Yeah,
okay.
on the charge.
And those, to be clear, are our fees, not your fees,
Right.
even though you get the money.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, we didn't get the money, so.
right,
uh,
so we're determining the fees and whether they should be waived or not, but the money goes to the city where they draw from that account for fees and
Yeah.
custodians.
Right,
So essentially, you could be waiving fees for an organization, and then they have to take out of any revenues or
Yeah.
whatever's out of that account to cover the fees.
right. Right.
Okay, so you look at the fees, what else do you look at? Like, do you look at capacity, do you look or think to consider capacities, and will they fit, and is it the right place for that type of event? Is there any kind of thought process when you see that application?
Well, the first one was the road race, which was outside.
Okay,
So,
so you didn't need to worry about inside.
right. And then the second one was just recently was this application to use the auditorium at Beaman.
Okay.
In classrooms, and I believe that was already approved by Ben. And
So we would have to
the
ask-
principal.
Okay.
So it had already been approved.
So when you get to that step, not necessarily that application, but you get to that step, what conversations are going on with the DPW to see when you're approving that, like what is happening between these two departments? Because I think that's very important. And
Right,
I think that's where we can do some
yeah,
good structuring.
yeah, exactly.
Was
we
there
didn't-
any outreach on either one of those applications to the DPW to see, hey, do you have a custodian available? Like, I thought that your department, Janine, is it Janine that
Janine.
works for you?
Yeah,
Has an ability to sign off as well. Are you seeing that sign off before you sign off? Or are you signing off and then they're signing off? In other words, are you giving it, when I say you, I mean the administration.
yeah,
Is our administration saying yes, and now it goes to DPW, and Janine just says yes, so now we have to find a custodian? Or is there an opportunity where this administration reaches out to the school and says, hey, we had this event, we might need 3 custodians? Is that gonna work? So how does it work?
it, to improve the process, it would be very helpful to have more communication between DPW and the school.
But how did it happen? How has it been happening since you've been here, which I know isn't that long, but so
Yeah.
is the approval happening here first? And then we're putting the request to DPW for the custodial coverage?
Let me ask Maria, because I
Okay.
only handled 2 of them.
Sorry, and Maria,
Yeah.
just jump in, because I don't know who's
Yes.
role. I'm just trying to figure out the process so that we know where we have some,
There's nowhere on the form for an approval by the DPW.
okay?
So they're the last ones to get it. And then there really isn't any communication unless they have a problem with the event or can't cover it or whatever.
Right,
By the time it gets to Janine,
Yep,
Janine's function is to figure out with Joe and Paul what custodial coverage is needed. And then she does the invoice. She doesn't have the authority to approve or disapprove the actual event. Because like I said, once we get it, it's an approved event by the school. And a lot of times if we might question some of them as to, why are we allowing this? Or we might have questions as to what's actually going to take place at the event, so we can reach out and see what that is.
Hi, my name's Gary Frisch, and I'd just like to let everyone know we had a power outage, and now we're back on, ready to continue our special BNF meeting on facility usage.
Recording in progress. So I believe we are back online. So we hesitated, we did not continue our conversation. And we're back online. So I think we ended where we were talking about process between the two departments.
Mhm.
So when Gary gets the application, you were saying it goes to Janine.
Shut off the speaker.
Who, me?
The speakers.
You gotta mute yourself and shut off your speaker, please.
Thank you, Gary.
How's it now?
Better? Okay, so you were saying Janine, who works in your department, gets the application and it's already signed off for
It's already
approval
approved, yeah.
by our department.
Yep.
And so you don't even know about it until it's been approved?
We don't know about it until we get it.
And the invoice only comes from, I've only got them from Janine.
But she does all the invoicing.
So when Janine gets that, her responsibility is to find out if a custodian's available?
No, she'll
Or does she
let-
bring it to anyone's
she'll bring it
attention?
to like the custodial supervisor's attention and say, you've got this happening at this school on this date from this time, you need coverage. And then he'll go get the coverage. She doesn't have to actually get the coverage.
So is it safe to say when your office gets this, it's under your opinion that everything's been vetted? Everything is fine, this is going forward, you just need to, your responsibility is to find the custodial coverage and make sure the buildings are up and operating at the time
Right.
of the event. If you have a concern, what if there's a concern about the application? Like say you read it and there's 800 people going to an event at a place where you feel it's not appropriate, how would you address that with the administration? Like what's the information sharing back and forth?
Either Joe, Mike, or I would probably call Gary or Ben and discuss it. Depending on, what it is.
I mean, I would think that would hopefully get caught by maybe one of the principals. If someone said, oh, we got 800 people coming to Beaman School or West Parish, they're supposed to list it, how many number of people attending, so
Right.
hopefully that would get caught before it gets to the DPW. Maybe not.
Yeah, so it's a position of the DPW that once you're getting it, it's already been approved.
Right, once
So
we
you
get it,
don't-
it's approved.
It's just a matter of how you get it done.
Right.
Okay, so that would go back to that conversation would go back to Gary, and we'll wait till the superintendent's available to dig into that process. Do you have any concerns with that, with the current process, the way that it is? And if you do, it's okay, because we're trying to make a better process out of this. I mean, Gary knows the more communication between the parties, the better.
Yes.
So,
I mean, I think the larger type events, would be nice if we found out about them beforehand, more beforehand, other than when they're approved.
so you would like any big event you'd want
Yeah,
to know
I mean,
before it's
I think it would be good to reach out to us and discuss it with us.
What about, so I know in the 14 years I've been here and what little I know about building rentals, we haven't had rentals that happen for a long period of time. Like there's no leasing. Some districts do leasing.
Right.
I don't think we've ever had
I think
any.
the longest running tenant we have is the YMCA.
The YMCA, which is during school, for after school
after-
daycare.
yeah.
Not on the weekends.
No.